Good things come to those who wait, along with other things.
Welcome to another episode of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, are Golix and Pettyfan, the Gruesome Twosome. We will find one of these names that work one day.
I object to that. I am in no way twosome.
Also, something. I have a twin.
Well, she doesn't work here, so
She doesn't work here yet.
That is perhaps a discussion for another time. Anyway, let's get to the news. Petty, why don't you start us off this week? Since I suppose you have things to get off your chest.
What, the people suck?
Well,
I mean, everyone knows that.
Yeah.
The big thing about last week is apparently, they're going to, at least for like a year or two, put my mom down as permanently disabled because of her shoulder injury last year.
Usually when something's permanent, it's for more than a year. But I know what you mean. It's subject to review.
Yeah. So they're going to have her either stop therapy or at least slow down going to therapy and see if giving the arm some rest helps it heal better. And her work is going to either need to find her light duty to do, or she's going to get medical retirement.
Oh boy.
Yeah. At least this happened at work, so work will be, paying her for it, because that'd be kind of bullshit if they didn't.
Yes, it would.
And yeah, so that's been a thing. Gonna be honest, dealing with my mother this past year has been a pain in the ass.
I can imagine.
And yeah, in a lighter note, I got some more Digimon cards because the new Battle of Omni set finally released at my local, so I got like 10 packs. So that was
Battle
cool.
of Omega sounds much cooler, but we missed the boat on that.
Yeah, I think the Japanese one was actually Operation Omega, but yeah.
I think it's whatever. Anyway, the point is it's Omega in Japanese and Omni in the US.
Yeah, I still find myself calling it Omega sometimes. Anyway, got some decent pulls out of that. I'm going to see if I can make any of them work in my either my decks I have. And if they don't, then they can be traded. The joys of trading cards. And apparently, in Tabletop Simulator on Steam, you can actually play the Digimon card game. They have a plugin for it. So
is that like on the workshop or whatever?
Yeah, you can get the plugin from the workshop and then just import your cards that you want to use in your deck. But yeah, that's going to be something interesting to look into later. And other than that, not a whole lot's been going on.
All right. Golix?
Not too much going on here. I've been taking some time off from work this week and the last week because my parents are away. So haven't been doing too much exciting, though. Mostly just keeping track of stuff, taking care of stuff. I did manage to acquire a Zelda and Loftwing amiibo because it was on Best Buy's website for a brief while.
No.
So that was nice, because I am about to start actually trying to play Skyward Sword HD, since I'm getting a bit closer to the end of Age of Calamity. I mean, technically I've beaten it, but I'm getting close to the end of the post game.
Right. All right.
And otherwise, not a whole lot.
Okay. Somebody playing something?
Yeah, it's like
Sorry,
Mario
sorry,
some
might have been
kind.
too loud.
Okay. Anything else, Galax?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. All right. Guess it's my go. Not so much news from me, but Mac just launched another Kickstarter this time. Usually he goes for Indiegogo, but he went to Kickstarter this time. He's trying to secure financing for 3 of his upcoming animated works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's going for a big one this time, which,
It's
I wish him luck, but
it's kind of, it's drawn like 71 out of 151. It's not doing well out the gate, but I'm like, to speak quite frankly,
so please help him with this.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not surprised. Like, his last few Indiegogo campaigns didn't go so hot.
To put it
And I'm
lightly.
like, yeah, and like he just kind of pushed this one out. Like, he dropped the announcement on us last week on the other show. Like,
I think he mentioned it to me before that on Sunday, but yeah, there was not a whole lot of time.
Yeah, I'm like, and he just kind of, he pushed it out on Monday. Did a token amount of promotion, but a Kickstarter campaign, you kind of have to work at it, don't you?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on crowdfunding, so I can't give any useful advice.
I mean, this isn't even like useful advice. This is kind of basic stuff. Like, and it's not helping with how Kickstarter arcs go. Like, but I guess we'll help in any way we can. Like, but like I said, it's a bit of an uphill battle from our vantage point. Like, if somebody wants to drop that link into the chat.
Sure. As soon as it gets friggin'.
Yeah. Like.
Just the way I have it, the friggin' Windows announcement of, hey, a new message came on Skype pops up and completely covers the.
I know. I know. I hate it. Like, I gotta figure out how to turn that off. Like, anyway, outside of that, bit of contention with the family that I won't really go into here. Let's just say, trying to persuade people to get their shots. It's not going as well as I'd hope, and hopefully nothing bad happens. But
yeah, I've been a little concerned about my parents since they decided. I mean, they're not being out a lot while they're away, but
in my case, I'm concerned about my sister-in-law because I live in Florida. She works. She works for the school system. She hasn't gotten her shots yet.
Fun.
Oh yeah, my dad works in healthcare and he's being cagey about getting his shot too.
So my standing is that if you work in healthcare and don't want to get a vaccination that's available, you should be banned from ever working in healthcare.
Well, I would say that in this case too, but Florida, death sentence.
Oh no! I'm not saying that that's like the case. I'm saying that that is my opinion. That like if you anti-vaccine people shouldn't be allowed to work in medicine.
But it's also like, she has 3 kids and they haven't, nobody under 12 can get shots yet. Like, so, it's a bit concerning. Not just for her health. My brother, as I understand it, hasn't gotten his shots, like probably because Walmart's going to mandate them at some point. I know they announced it, but I don't think they've settled on a date. But point is, kind of concerned about some family here because, we're like, if this state were a country, they'd be mandating travel bans. So Yeah, scary stuff. Anyway, that's my news for this week. So, merrily, we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Xalavier Nelson Jr. of Strange Scaffolds.
Solid.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, how are you doing tonight?
Good. Doing pretty good. There is a lot of stuff happening right now, both in the industry and also on our set of projects. Strange Scaffold has about 6 things going internally, some of which have been revealed, some of which haven't. So it's a wild time.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. But before we get into that properly, we like to start out by getting to know the people, the person, the actual designers, creators, makers of the video games first. And we start by asking this particular question. What got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
So, hello, everyone. I'm Xalavier Nelson Jr. I'm a creative director, and I got into games in a pretty weird way. I learned at a pretty early age that games journalists existed. I loved reading games magazines. I would always pick them up from the library, and I was the type of person who always found the manual as compelling, if not more so, than the game itself. So I would even inside the game store, like open up a game and then start looking at the manual. At one point, I was reading an article about Duke Nukem Forever of all games, a game I would not play and was not allowed to play, but would read up on anyway. And there was this whole controversy around Gearbox potentially trying to buy positive reception, and as just like a footnote in this overall piece, the writer talked about how games journalists and content creators, this is before content creation was as prominent of a thing, but content creators got games for free. And when you are a preteen, the idea of getting free video games is like, yeah, you don't think about rent, you don't think about food, you're like, oh, this is literally the only perfect job. Why would anyone do anything else? So around the age of 12, I pretended to be an adult on the internet to become a games journalist, and that's how I started my career.
Oh, now was this for like a website? Was this for YouTube?
This was before also YouTube content creation was a big thing, but like, yeah, I saw the beginning of pivot to video. I wrote for several sites at one point. And this was more getting towards adulthood. I think I was an adult at this point. I was a columnist for PC Gamer magazine, their single print columnist for 2 years, writing about writing a column called Inside Development about seemingly mundane pieces of game developers' jobs that are unexpectedly difficult and complex and contribute to the games that we know and love and play today. Yeah, I went from everywhere. I tried a little bit of everything when it came to journalists to journalism. So interviews, content creation, print, and more blog heavy things. I got to see eons pass, and then I was like, hey, I'm an adult, and also money is required to eat. And I rolled on into further journalism and then into game development, and here I am now.
Okay. So I guess a few things in the game journalism side. Was there a particularly favorite subject that you had, or a particularly favorite format?
I always loved writing features. There is a satisfaction and a necessity to writing fantastic guides and reviews under duress, finding ways to discuss these things in nuanced manners despite having potentially a very short amount of time to do them. but the idea of bringing critical reevaluation to games when our typical cycle for chatting about a thing ends up to a week after its release, if not, earlier. Going back to games that had been published years, even decades before, and talking about things that they did well and things that we can still learn from today, or ways to reevaluate something that had not been given its fair shake at the time. That was something I was very passionate about as a journalist, and it's something I remain passionate about as a creator today. Even more so because now, like, my games, I see sometimes people do like reevaluations or even Twitter threads about games I've worked on, being like, this was underrated or this sucked, here's why. And the idea at all of sort of extending the lifetime through which we can talk about a creative work that is digital, that is interactive, I think that's not just immensely satisfying and healthy for creators and for the audience. It's necessary for the medium to thrive, because games is kind of, due to the cultural reset that happens every 3 to 5 years, following the avenue of the typical console generation. It has meant that it's like if we were, what was a movie released in 2021, go back 5 years, what were the 2016 hits? It's like if we didn't talk about anything before 2016 movies. If the latest acceptable movie to talk about was the original Suicide Squad movie. It sounds ridiculous, but that's kind of the place where games has been as a culture perpetually for the past few decades, and it's nice to see that changing as things like Game Pass and backwards compatibility and the erosion of the typical console generation open up the possibility for longer term discussion and knowledge sharing of what we're doing as a medium and why.
Right. I think another thing that's changing the game, so to speak, in that regard is retro gaming. Going all the way back to, say, like the Wii Virtual Console, and having games be fashioned after old games, or old games being fashioned after old games, like Mega Man 9 or something like that. That also helps the conversation, not just to be about the current trends. But putting all that aside, what made you want to make the leap from games journalism to game development?
It was really looking for the avenues through which I would continue to have a career in this medium. Not just looking for a foot in the door as far as the industry went, but what I was deeply passionate about as a creator and as a person. I figured if I followed that and managed to pursue that as a career path, I would eventually find whatever weird niche or mix composed me, and fight burnout by identifying the exact space that I want to occupy in the medium. So at first I thought I wanted to write about games, and I did that for a while. And then I thought I wanted to write for games. I did that for a while. I went into narrative design, so not just writing, but also bringing in the game design elements of it, and a passion for that and for figuring out how to get games released with as little pain to the developers involved as possible, and with the highest quality point possible within those constraints. That led me into multi-classing into everything from business development to games production, to actively learning about all these different sectors, to the exact very weird place I am now, where I collaborate with other people as a writer, as a narrative designer sometimes, to full-on directing games, singing, acting, getting knee-deep into code despite despising it. If there's a thing to do in games, if not do it, I do my best to know quite a bit about the process so I can meaningfully collaborate with the folks who do specialize in those sectors. And so, yeah, it's very surreal, but the very weird place that I'm in now is all a result of looking long term for who I was and what that meant for a career in games. And then once I identified that, trying to find ways to do that as sustainably as possible, not just for myself, but for the people I work with and collaborate with. And I'm fortunate enough to do it so with.
Indeed. I mean, I guess for most people that would sound strange, but for us, it happens a lot more on the indie scene. Like, in fact, that's kind of the norm there, ironically enough. Like, we have people all the time tell us that they have to wear many hats to make a game because, I'm assuming you work with small teams. Are you a one dev studio kind of deal?
No. The team sizes fluctuate. I have worked on things as small as 1 or 2 people, and I've worked on other teams in significant past capacities where you have like several dozen. So it's all a matter of scale at that point and looking for the opportunities and risks that come from working on whatever genre or team setup that you happen to be associated with at that time.
Okay. And what games did you work on when you were purely a narrative designer?
I'll be honest with you, I could not tell you. I've worked on over 60 games in the last 5 years, so please do not ask me to remember specific career phases.
Okay, I gotta admit that's a bit of a change from our usual kind of interview where we get the person that worked 5 years on one game, like. But okay, I suppose given that kind of gameography, we should probably fast forward to the present. And indeed talk about. I'm assuming this is your latest release, the Dog Airport game, or specifically, it's an airport for aliens currently run by dogs. That is the actual title of the game. It's certainly descriptive. Although saying that it's run by dogs is perhaps a bit of a misnomer, since it's more run by cardboard cutouts of dogs.
Yeah, those are JPEG stock photos and sometimes real photos of animals which have been infused with narrative life as well as sometimes systemic surprises, such as dogs that once you interact with them will leave you cursed and potentially stranded in a airborne hell dimension that you have to escape out of before you can return to the rest of the game.
That's a wide variety of things to happen. Admittedly, there's a lot of questions to be asked here. I suppose the first is, how did you come up with such a very specific idea for a game?
So an airport for aliens currently run by dogs was the result of spending a lot of time in airports, as you might guess. And when you spend enough time in airports and spend a lot of time traveling, you realize just how uncanny these places are on an existential and reality-based level. One moment, I'm so sorry, but like my door has just gone off. 1 second.
I hope that's not literal. Like, if he has to actually chase after his door.
We'll find out in a moment, won't we?
Yeah. Well, assuming he catches it. I hope he has like a deadbolt. Like, this is also awkward because now we got to fill the space. Like, guess in the meantime, Petty, how's the game?
And I am back. Thank you for your patience.
Okay. As you were saying.
Yes. As existential and realistic constructions. They're deeply uncanny. They are places made for humans, but also absolutely not made for human beings to inhabit. If you've been to one airport, if you've been to a couple of airports, you can navigate an airport anywhere in the world, but also the way in which they operate, from the schedules and idiosyncrasies associated with airport timetables, to the rate at which people movers move, to the very distinct sensation that you have ended up on the slow elevator in a given context, all combine to create these pockets of humanity, places that are inhuman, that are even hostile, but also deeply, desperately human. So finding a alternative way to examine this very strange microcosm of what it means to be human through the eyes of something that was inhuman. At first, the concept was an airport for aliens. You would be stranded in a series of alien airports, trying to unravel their strange logic. And then through a series of interesting coincidences, that pivoting to become an airport for aliens currently run by dogs, as we examined what a joy-filled version of this uncanny valley of human interactions would look like. Ended up fueling one of the most delightful development processes I've been a part of in my life. It ended up being one of very few next-gen console exclusives. We released it to an amazing reception, including places like The Guardian. Got the same ranking as a frickin' Call of Duty game. And yeah, now that team is working on something else, and the general approach of Strange Scaffold, my studio, as we do things, is to bring more things into the world, as opposed to trying to razor focus on one thing for 5 years, because we believe if we can make games in more healthy, sustainable, and efficient ways for the people who are on the development side of the process, that the end results will be more joyful, cheaper to make, faster to produce, and also just quite simply better for players and for the developers who serve them.
Certainly a lofty mission statement there. I suppose, do you feel that you've been successful at it so far?
Thus far, the overriding conclusion in my mind as we pursue this course of development is it does not work for everyone. If the entire industry could not replicate what we're doing, that wouldn't be good for us creatively or personally. There's so many different ways to produce any creative work, including a video game, that I would not advocate for our particular approach as the one true and right way.
No.
But the other thing I've discovered as a result of pursuing this course is that, yeah, just as we talk to other people, some of whom are languishing in the course of their own 5-year development journeys, as they see the amount of things that we're bringing to the world and the positive impact that those things can have, and that those are all consistently to a high bar of quality and strangeness and commitment to their creative vision, that I'm stunned. I've looked back in my notebooks over the years, because I like to have notebooks where I write down ideas and also chronicle the journeys that we go through in our different development processes. And reading notebooks from when I had taken for granted that this type of approach to development was not possible, because so many people had told me that was the case, I am stunned to find that all of the things that didn't make sense about the ways I had heard and seen and participated in games being made can, in fact, if that is your development priority, if you have the particular balance of skills and, of course, fortune that leads to success in pursuing a creative development effort. I'm stunned that it's working, and it makes sense that it's working, and I can't think of any reason I would want to make a game in any different way now, having witnessed that it's possible.
I mean, that is exceedingly good to hear, actually, because, yeah, I am aware of developmental practices in the industry. Not just, AAA stuff, but a lot of indie burnout is because, people don't have the manpower a lot of the time to complete a game in 6 months or what have you.
And it isn't just manpower; it's scope, right? It's this demand for an arbitrary measurement of what makes a valid game.
I suppose, but sometimes that's a bit more real in the sense that we have had developers on the program who, no joke, their first game was a full-on 3D action RPG affair. Kind of open world and all that. And
this is what we call a bold choice.
Yes, and it was no surprise that took 3 years to make. Or sometimes the small games take 5 years because they're working on the animations for so long. Very, detailed. So yeah.
Or there's a ton of interactions of stuff that they have to.
So we certainly hear a lot of those stories. So it's good to hear that this is possible.
Yeah, it's all again combating the perception that there's a single way to make a game. There's a lot of tweets going viral these days in negative senses about people demanding certain levels of detail in games. Like there was a tweet about someone's going like, "Oh, you can't smash the car windows in Back 4 Blood." And I think that there's a very real question to be asked of, is that necessary? Because if, as in games, we are basically creating the universe from scratch with every single release, even if we're using the same exact game engine, even if we are basing it upon a previous game or making a sequel, you are in so many ways building a universe from scratch to the way animations are played. Something fundamental to how text appears on the screen can be totally revolutionized. There is really valuable questions to be asked about what meaningfully benefits a player's experience from a visual level, from a design level, from a storytelling level. An Airport for Aliens currently run by dogs.
If you wish to make a game from scratch, you must first create the universe.
Of course. And an Airport for Aliens currently run by dogs, we could have made every single dog be a bespoke 3D character who was animated and so on and so forth. But if it's instead intentionally approached as it was, like, no, all of these characters, every single one except for one dog somewhere in the game, and I won't spoil where, is a JPEG. What type of game is the result of that process? You get wild results. You get wild creativity. It reminds me of the early days of Adult Swim that at the time were not received all that well, especially critically, because it looked like a bunch of poorly animated fart jokes. And it's only after years have passed that people are going back and watching it, and they're getting this widespread critical reevaluation saying, oh, 12-ounce mouse was actually a Lynchian nightmare as told through paper cutouts. Space Ghost Coast to Coast. You can trace back a lot of modern content creation and Let's Plays to, and commentary. Things like TikTok duets have a spiritual root in things like Space Ghost Coast to Coast. This unexpected nuance in intentionally strange and sometimes crude packages. That's what I'm passionate about exploring, and people seem to really dig it. And I'm excited to see that us having this freedom to pursue this approach to development is also giving other people the freedom, from what I hear, to pursue their own fantastic id. May they have good luck with it.
Right. I think the whole graphical detail debate is, is further, AAA versus indie and all that stuff. Like, you cite Back for Blood. That is like a AAA game being funded by a major company, major publisher, and being developed by a studio that has a very big pedigree. And there's an expectation of detail there. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's not surprising that people would be complaining that a window could or could not be broken in such a game when, those games prioritize that kind of detail versus the indie scene where, quite frankly, there's a lot more freedom in not just what you put out thematically, but graphically as well.
I think part of this comes from how this cultural expectation of what AAA means comes from how, up to a certain point, there was such a fervent desire to hide what was happening behind the curtain. This is how you get things like Sega's blast processing. The Genesis is better than the SNES because we have blast processing and they don't. What is blast processing? Don't ask. But if you can take this buzzword and believe in it, that is a foundation for a console war, for attachment to a brand. There are people who speak belovedly of the impact of blast processing today, especially if they aren't familiar with game development, not knowing that blast processing was literally just a marketing term. And that type of practiced shaving off of the edges, trying to hide the rough lines, is, as we get to more and more photorealistic environments, starting to backfire on us. Because the reality is, I have a friend who is a designer on Payday 3, was a designer on Overkill's The Walking Dead, and
man, apologies.
I feel for him, and the thing that I come and seeing him talk about this Back for Blood thing in particular, just speaking very simply about a thing that a lot of multiplayer developers know, a problem known as replication. If you have four people, or up to 8 people if you have the PvP mode going, who can simultaneously see a window, and you track the smashing of that window permanently for all players, the impact that has, not just on fidelity for the overall game, but like on a literal amount of data that can travel through a internet connection. Seeing the extremely precise ways in which developers have to solve questions of what is worth showing on players' screens, what's worth keeping the same, what things do you hide, what things do you show, what is important to a player, and how do you make their experience meaningful. For so long, that knowledge has been hidden from players, and so it is not surprising to me that we're now getting this pseudo culture war around what quality means, because for so long the audience for our games has been robbed of the vocabulary to know how their favorite games are coming to be and how they are made with quality. So Back for Blood, is it a good game? I haven't played it myself yet. It looks like it might be, but I hope for a future where when we get Back for Blood 2, we as an audience, developer or not, have a language to understand what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why. And from that basis, determine whether or not it fits a standard of quality. That is something that I have hope for, and that it's something I work with in terms of the transparency that we use for our own development processes on teams I'm a part of.
Like, certainly an interesting point of view. I think a lot of it comes down to what has been prioritized, what has been pursued, what has been focused upon by, especially the, quote unquote mainstream of the industry. Honestly, going all the way back to the beginning, and graphical fidelity has absolutely been on the forefront of that engine. And don't get me wrong, that is important, especially as a driver of technology. But it's been such a hyper focus that you get people flipping out over a puddle not reflecting right. The Spider-Man controversy, that wasn't a controversy, and yeah, it can be frustrating, especially since attention to detail, that is on a developer by developer approach.
It's also far more a question of budget and dev time than anything else. Most developers I know can tell you the exact, like, we've all seen a car. We know what a car window looks like and how it can shatter. Your ability to model that is often not based upon technical prowess in any way, shape, or form. Is that more important than, say, the ability to have, for each character to have more than one gun, and the systems that go into balancing those guns, allowing people to switch between them dynamically, have, for example, an inventory system, or have stats attached to these things, how those stats roll. There's so much that goes into every single portion of a game that I'd even be happy to see the phrase attention to detail significantly alter over time, because the attention is being paid there. It is just from there a matter of prioritization to bring the best result to players at any given moment.
Right. That's where you run into situations like Red Dead Redemption 2, where they're focused on getting horse parts right. And
yes.
Such. But it's like, as far as the game actually playing well, that's a bit more touch and go, and they claim realism. I don't know. It's like I haven't liked the way Rockstar games have maneuvered in a long time. But anyway, I suppose getting back to the dog airport game, why was there a specific reason why you wanted to use dogs as the animal representation here?
Yeah, I think dogs are particularly interesting to me as a subject for a game, because their perspective is not one of ignorance. It is one of joyful enthusiasm in a complicated world. And when you reflect real life concerns through that joy and through that enthusiasm, through that level of nuance and that very specific care, it's surprising how much that changes the way you design an open world adventure game. So in this game, for example, we have fully simulated airport timetables. Planes arrive at the airport, planes take off from the airport in real time. You can play this entire game in real time if you choose, waiting for flights, waiting for the boarding time for your gate, going to your gate, getting the things that you need for your gate, and taking off, or missing your flight. In the original version of the game, in Airport for Aliens, this would tie into a deeper existential threat of, well, as someone who is a human in a world created for and by aliens, this place is hostile to you, and if you miss your flight, this can send you down a systemic spiral that you have to find some way to recover from. When you make the dogs the main character, it suddenly asks you a question which you don't get the opportunity to have all too often in video games, which is if this world cared about you, if this world is fundamentally kind and roots for your success, what do the systems it's built upon look like? And in this game, if you miss your flight, you just go to a dog and ask for a new ticket. You ask for 50 tickets if you want, because what matters is that you have what matters is that you need help. What matters is that you're a person that exists. Therefore, you inherently deserve to be cared about, according to a dog's perspective. And it's one of the most strange changes of mind I've had to pursue along a development cycle, because I like my dystopias. I like my existential dread. Every day having to find new ways and interesting ways to ask, what does a kind but compelling version of this world look like? That's the opportunity you get through dogs. And sometimes you encounter systems by other beings in this universe, for example, cats. And it is strange just how much you can feel the difference between those structures when you're within them. I think our world is defined by the structures and the perspectives that they represent through their operation. Things like healthcare, and getting an opportunity to examine that in a friendly and absurd and compelling way that is also shippable as an indie is one of the great joys I've had in my career thus far.
Certainly an interesting take on things. How do you are you looking to convey existential dread or a calming motif with the whole dog airport thing?
Depends on what part of the game you're in.
Fair enough. As far as the dogs themselves, are they a particular breed, or are they all sorts of doggos?
All sorts of doggos with individual personalities, behaviors, perspectives. If you pursue a chain of interesting secrets in this level, you will find, for example, goth dogs, and figure out what the concept of goth means through a doggy goth or goth kindness means through a doggy perspective. These secrets and more in an airport for aliens currently run by dogs. And we're doing similar things in a far darker inherent setting with Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator, which is actually coming out pretty soon. We haven't announced the release date yet, but it is soon TM. And one of the fundamental questions of that project is just when you turn body parts into the foundation of an economic system, how quickly you detach from seeing them as meaningful pieces of a human body. I was doing a playtest with my parents, of all people, and I was talking about how they could, because of a market fluctuation, they could buy this set of human souls for much cheaper than normal and use those to not just boost other things in your cargo hold, because organs can have impacts to each other in your cargo hold, including eating each other. But also, those souls could be sold for a much higher profit after that given impact on the market had run its course. And I stopped myself mid-sentence near the end of my explanation and internally just started screaming, because that's a human soul. A human soul is an important thing. And yet, as soon as you attach a dollar value to it, especially from a capitalist perspective, it becomes a trade good. Now we're talking about the market index, baby.
Maybe more the commodities market, but I get your point.
We have both in our game.
Neat. So it's a deep dive. And I suppose the question here is, I can guess kind of where this idea came from, but, where did this idea come from?
The simplest way to begin talking about it is just I was at the hospital one day, and a person came in who was not in medical garb and asked me, would I like to see my insides? Closing the door behind him. And I had two thoughts in that moment. The first is, I hope this guy doesn't kill me. And the second is, if this guy doesn't kill me, this will make a really good story afterwards. So I said, yes, of course. Turned out the person was a medical professional, just not in their scrubs at that time. And they were getting more practice with the ultrasound machine. So I got to see my heart work and my liver work and what shape my kidneys were. And I've always been interested in body horror and the dynamics of this thing we live inside, and try to think about as little as possible and the impact that has on our lives and on the way we think about things in emotional situations. But the reality of actually seeing my organs work seeded something that eventually became Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator. What happens when you think about organs in a different way, for profit, for change, or as a insight into who you are?
Like, that's certainly one hell of a story. Like, and I hope that I'm glad that guy didn't get a bedpan to the head.
I had no bedpan or means of defense, so if anything, I'm the one who's thankful coming away from that encounter.
Fair enough. I'm just saying that is just kind of the recipe for violence in one regard or another. So, good thing it was a lot more innocuous.
I'm very thankful that it was.
Yes. Anyway, so how does this game compare to the Dog Airport one in terms of scale? Like, are you working with a similar amount of people, the same people?
As with most of our games, actually, different team, different project size, different genre entirely. So, Dog Airport game was an open world comedy adventure game. A small core team, and then a range of contributors for things like animation, art, and music / sound design. Shout out to our now resident musician and sound designer on pretty much everything Strange Scaffold, RJ Lake. Tom Bonita was my main collaborator on Dog Airport game. Space World Organ Trading Simulator, that's like a team of 6, 8, doing very precise things to bring a very precise creative vision to life. And we've got teams of fluctuating size and fluctuating project scale, including the recently announced supernatural third-person shooter El Paso Elsewhere. We got like 6 of those, all humming away, trying to find ways to make cool games better, faster, and cheaper.
Like, once again, a lofty but noble goal. Anyway, so I think we are running low on time here.
Yes.
And indeed, and it was great having you on the program. Indeed, I'm hoping that we can talk about El Paso Elsewhere in October, if that is at all possible.
My schedule is buck wild for like the next few weeks and on, but we can see if we can make something happen. I appreciate y'all wanting to hear more about the project. It's among the very coolest things I've ever had the opportunity to touch. I'm so thankful I get to make that game.
I mean, if nothing else, that's actually the game that introduced me to Strange Scaffold, so to speak. As in, I saw that. Like, I'm trying to remember which event I saw it at, because there are a lot of them. and they kind of run together sometimes. But this kind of low fidelity homage to Max Payne and Shadow Man, I think. It's interesting. So, I look forward to talking more about it. If not October, sometime in the future. But until then, the game we most featured here today, a airport for aliens currently run by dogs, is currently available on Steam. It's on the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 as well.
It's on. It is an Xbox Series XS exclusive.
Okay. You can pick it up today for $19.99. Petty, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion for the week. Yeah, you can leave if you want. Sorry, our guest is just asking if he wants to stick around or not. No. Anyway, so this week we are talking about 3D Realms. Mainly because, they were in the news last week because they were part of the latest buying spree from the multi-tendrilled monstrosity that is the Embracer Group, along with 7 other companies. And the name 3D Realms, how much of it, of a light bulb is going on in your head, maybe depends on your age, maybe depends on quite a number of factors, but they have a long and storied history in the medium. And today, the modern day 3D Realms is more about producing faux retro shooters, shooters that harken back to an earlier age but are brand new. Though they are also working on a remaster of an old game. They're doing the Kingpin remaster, if I'm remembering correctly, and I think they're also doing one for Sin, the original Sin. But it's more along the lines of Graven, which is, I think, an homage to Heretic. There's a lot of these throwback boomer shooters these days. Like, a lot more than I would have anticipated just a year ago.
I mean, it was a very popular genre back in ye day.
Yeah. And 3D Realms was at the forefront of that genre back in the day, because their most popular game series that you probably know of is they were the ones who created Duke Nukem. They were not just the ones you know. Yeah, they did the 3D Duke Nukem 3D game. They did the first 2 Duke Nukem games, which are not nearly as fondly remembered, probably because those were pretty mediocre early 90s PC platform games. They were also the original developer on Duke Nukem Forever. They also...
The original out of how many?
Well, Duke Nukem Forever's development is... it was one company just working on it for a very long time until they ran out of money and had to tag in other companies to finish the job. This, by the way, is what happened to another game that they worked on, Prey 2006. The original Prey. That was that's the first-person shooter that dealt with portals that wasn't Portal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that game was reasonably successful. It just, when you think of, and the thing about Portal is that's not a first-person shooter. That's a first-person puzzle game. you can shoot the portal gun.
Yes,
but,
your method of solving puzzles is shooting, but
you're shooting the puzzle solution.
yeah,
Prey is it?
you rather dramatically cannot solve your problems by shooting at your enemies directly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Prey is much more conventional in its mechanics outside of doing a lot of weird shit with portals. Like that's the big reason why that game took so long to get released. And that had a similar story where they had to get another company to actually complete the game, Human Head Studios. It's just much, much better in terms of how that worked out. But, even putting away the Duke Nukem franchise, they created another... they created a much more cultier classic back in the mid-90s. That's Rise of the Triad. Good God. Probably the methamphetamine of that particular class of shooters.
That's an interesting metaphor.
But not too far off.
Yeah, it's fucking bonkers. But not in a strange, surreal way. This is a game where it's got so many fucking quirks that I scarcely have time to go into it. Okay, there's a food called priest porridge. If you use a rocket to warm it up, it gives you more health.
Yeah, that scans.
Like I said, this is just that's just the surface of the insanity that is Rise of the Triad. Now, but maybe one day we'll do a dedicated episode on Rise of the Triad and its myriad of expansion packs and just Extreme Rise of the Triad. They weren't lying about that.
Is the Triad being mentioned the Chinese organized crime unit or a different one?
A different one. That's just the organization you're fighting, led by a cult leader called El Oscuro. I have just getting into him is a fucking mind trip. Just because he is actually a snake god thing who reproduces asexually.
Because of course.
Yeah, I'm like, there is so much more to this fucking game.
I'm pretty sure we'd be here all week trying to go into it.
Yeah. But like I said, this there's quite a few of these kind of games from 3D Realms or Apogee, as they were once known. And I guess it's also worth noting that 3D Realms has brought back the Apogee name. They're indie publishing. But back in the day, Apogee was at the forefront of shareware games. If you played PC games in the 90s, you probably encountered one of their games or a shareware, because they were also not the original publisher of id Software games. That's actually Softkey. But they were the next publisher. They were the publisher of Commander Keen and Wolfenstein 3D. Kind of two hallmark games. Wolfenstein 3D is perhaps more well known for its hallmarks, but honestly, I think the more technologically important one out of the two is actually Commander Keen. Commander Keen doesn't get doesn't get nearly the amount of focus as it does because it was a 2D platform game, and id Software would go on to maybe not invent, because 3D shooters, first-person shooters actually like go all the way back to the late 70s. It just they didn't really coalesce until the early 90s. In fact, Wolfenstein 3D, not even their first-person shooter from id. That was either Catacombs 3D or Hover Tank 3D, however you want to see Hover Tank 3D. but that's getting off track here. Commander Keen, this was the game that introduced scrolling to PC gaming. This was actually a very tough nut to crack, because it was something that was holding back, getting NES quality platform games on PC. Like PC gaming could do a lot of things. Back in the day, scrolling was like the fucking holy grail, and id Software cracked that particular nuts. But they also produced the starts for other prominent companies like Parallax Software, who went on to create Descent, or more importantly, Remedy Entertainment, because Apogee, 3D Realms, they published Death Rally, kind of one of those. Yeah, it's a rally game about death. Carmageddon, basically a 2D Carmageddon, from what I remember. It's been a while, granted, but this is an important connection because, probably the game series that they're most well known for outside of Duke Nukem is Max Payne. They were the original producers on Max Payne 1 and 2, at least alongside Remedy. It's just Take-Two was the console publisher of those, and eventually Remedy sold the franchise to Take-Two. Like I said, I could go on. If you had a PC in the 90s, you probably played something from them. Biomenace, Wacky Wheels, probably the first attempt at doing a Mario Kart game on the PC. At least the first notable one. Monuments of Mars is one that was cited in the writer's room this past week.
Yeah, man, I played that. That was one of the few games that my grandfather had on his computer.
I said,
I played it a lot when we visited him.
Yeah. My personal first experience with Apogee / 3D Realms was with a pair of games that came pre-installed on a computer my family got in the 90s. That was the original Commander Keen. We're talking the mid-90s, but you would still get earlier games back in the day because, they offered an entire fucking episode. Or an entire fucking game. The other game was Pharaoh Tomb, which, despite being created in 1990, 1991, if I'm remembering correctly, looked like a game out of, say, 1983.
I think that was another one that Grandpa had.
Like I said, Phantom Tomb was hard, very hard, infuriatingly hard. But I played it because it was a game on the computer. And anyway, the major turning point for 3D Realms came both in the collapse of the original company after, the development of Duke Nukem Forever went on so long that they ran out of money. And, they had to not necessarily sell off the franchise then and there, but eventually, in 2010 is, I believe, when they, had to, they sold off Duke Nukem Forever and the entire franchise to Gearbox. They're the ones who, oversaw the finishing touches there. And I'll be honest, I think Gearbox gets a little too much shit for the state that Duke Nukem Forever came out in. Yeah, it was a shit game, but, Take-Two, they were the ones who just kind of, Gearbox, all of them, they were just ones who wanted to get the goddamn thing out the door so, they could move on. I don't blame them for that. You know, maybe I can blame them for the shit console ports, but you know, I where this game went wrong happened to be more on the side of 3D Realms than fucking Randy Pitchford. Aliens, Colonial Marines, that's all him. But there's a lot of finger pointing that can go to the fucking failure of Duke Nukem Forever. And so after that, a company called Interceptor Entertainment comes into the picture. We actually had them on the program way back in the day when we wanted to talk about the 2013 edition of Rise of the Triad. In fact, that was the first appearance of one David Oshry on the program. Mm-hmm. And his personality. But yeah, Interceptor Entertainment would go on to purchase the assets of 3D Realms and, you know, the stuff they had left or wasn't licensed out because they also created Shadow Warrior, a game I like talking about less fondly than Duke Nukem. Like, look, Duke Nukem has its problems as a character, and you know all that. It is so much worse with Shadow Warrior. Like, I'll be honest, I don't know how that fucking got created. Like, even in '98, like having a white guy do the the stereotypical racist Asian accent thing. You know, the fucking Mickey Rooney over here, just no moss. But, you know, Shadow Warrior managed to get successfully rebooted into its own series, but that's in the hands of Devolver Digital. Yeah, so Interceptor Entertainment bought the remains of 3D Realms, became the new 3D Realms, alongside a sister company called Slipgate Ironworks. They're the actual like development company that makes the new stuff. But they also do, games from external developers. Like one of the big boomer shooters of the past few years was Fury. If you don't remember that one, that's the throwback FPS that is actually built in an old ass engine. You know, it's a new build engine game. And also, fuck the developer and fuck 3D Realms, because I don't forget about the transphobia room. So, just putting that there. And like I said, you know, they're involved in a lot of these things, not just in terms of producing and creating them, but in fact, another reason why I wanted to talk about them this week is because they've got a weekend event happening called Realms Deep. They had one last year. It's going to be showcasing a lot of retro FPS games. You know, both, I'm presuming, new and old, so to speak. But like they got a lot of stuff. Another game that they helped create, Ghost Runner. You know, so it's not just all throwback stuff, because Ghost Runner is honestly a very modern FPS or first-person slasher. I think it's more known for its sword work than its guns.
First person battle game.
Yeah, and also got a lot of Mirror's Edge kind of parkour running. They got Wrath, Aeon of Ruin, and other games that you'll eventually see on the CV11 channel. And so to, further connect things, I suppose, As I mentioned last week, they got 3D Realms and Slipgate Ironworks got picked up by the Embracer Group. Specifically, and perhaps a bit oddly, the Saber Interactive unit, as opposed to the THQ Nordic branch, which they're actually doing 2 unannounced games for right now. That came out in the purchase agreement. But there's apparently some kind of history there with Saber and 3D Realms. But I guess it's worth noting that technically speaking, the same company owns both the original creator of Duke Nukem and the current IP holder. That being said, that doesn't necessarily mean that if 3D Realms wants to make a Duke Nukem game, they can make a Duke Nukem game, because each what they call vertice of the Embracer Group controls their own IP. In fact, like a couple of years ago, you had Deep Silver and THQ Nordic exchange franchises. This is actually something that happens quite a bit in the corporate megaliths. Like another good example is Street Fighter. Believe it or not, Street Fighter, that's controlled specifically by Capcom USA. It's their American branch that dictates how Street Fighter gets used, not just as a game, but as a franchise. Like if, say, Udon Comics wants to continue making Street Fighter comics, they have to go to the American branch, not the Japanese branch. You know, these are the kind of details you don't learn until you really start looking at the industry. So my point is, you know, it's not just after what 3D Realms is working on, they can just go and make a Duke Nukem game anymore. You know, they'd still have to ask. They would still have to ask Gearbox about it. But the other interesting thing is, you know, Gearbox and 3D Realms, they had a ton of litigation over the past decade regarding various aspects of the purchase of the Duke Nukem franchise. You know, down to, you know, simple shit like, oh, you didn't actually sell off all of the music rights to them. And it turns out you weren't paying the original composer what he was owed. That kind of thing. Apparently
pay your composers, by the way.
Right. You know, but the thing is, they didn't know that they had to do that because fucking 3D Realms didn't tell them. I believe that's what the court case amounted to. So, yeah, like a lot of lawsuits, and yeah, it all ended up kind of water under the bridge. But like I said, you know, and I'm sure 3D Realms and Gearbox could collaborate should they choose, but it's not necessarily a guarantee because they're kind of the same overall family, different branches. So it's not just a given. You know, rights things can be a lot more complicated than they first appear, even within the same company. Anyway, like I said,
stupid legal stuff being all complicated and things.
That's law for you. I mean, hell, there was the time that fucking 3D Realms tried to create a Duke Nukem game, even though they specifically sold off all the fucking rights to Duke Nukem. You know, this is the game that became Bombshell, by the way, which was the basis for Ion Fury. I mean, the character of Bombshell actually has her roots in the Duke Nukem franchise, but they never actually used her in said franchise, and that's another one of the things that's legally important, because even if you create something for, you know, you don't use that for that franchise, if she doesn't make an appearance in a Duke Nukem game, like she was originally supposed to be Duke Nukem's sidekick in Duke Nukem Forever, but that didn't happen. So she was not a Duke Nukem character. So they were free and clear to use her. Copyrights. Anyway, I think that's about it for 3D Realms. And yeah, that's about it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. The week ahead, as previously mentioned, we do have a Friday show, and we will be welcoming Andreas Julianson of Fast Travel Games. They are a VR developer. They seem to be fairly well known in that circle. Now, admittedly, VR gaming isn't something I keep a super huge eye on. But, we do have our fair share of VR developers. Anyway, we'll be talking about Wraith the Oblivion Afterlife, a first-person VR horror exploration game set in the World of Darkness universe. I'm not exactly sure what the World of Darkness universe is. Is that something from White Wolf? Sounds like something that they create. Anyway, and we'll also be talking about, on the other side of the coin, the curious tale of the stolen pets. This is a lot more family friendly. So look for that on Friday. On the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews of No Longer Home, A Tale of Synapse, The Chaos Theories, Donuts and Justice, and Harvester of Dreams Episode 1. And we do have a new episode of Last News Desk on the Left planned in about 10 minutes. So until very shortly, I shall wish you good gaming.